The silence was the first sign. It wasn't the eerie kind that crept in after midnight or during a power outage. This was different. This was wrong. Birds no longer chirped outside the windows. Cars no longer passed on the main road. No one called. No one knocked. The world had gone quiet, eerily, unnaturally quiet. Inside their suburban home, the Morrison family tried to pretend everything was normal. Emily Morrison, a mother of two and former high school teacher, stared at her phone screen for the 5th time in an hour. Still no messages. Still no updates. The last alert had come 3 days ago, an emergency broadcast telling citizens to remain indoors due to a violent outbreak of unknown origin. That was all. Since then, radio silence. Her husband, Jake, sat on the couch, cleaning the barrel of the shotgun he had inherited from his father. It was loaded now. It hadn't been for years. He looked up at Emily and forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We've got enough food for 2 weeks," he said quietly, as if afraid to wake the quiet around them. "Maybe more if we ration." Emily nodded but said nothing. Her thoughts were with their daughter, Mia, who sat in her room upstairs, headphones on, sketching in her notebook like nothing outside had changed. She was only 15, bright, artistic, and too smart to be fooled. But pretending made it easier. Then there was Noah. 10 years old and already asking the kinds of questions no child should have to ask. "Why don't we go outside anymore?" he had asked that morning. "Why are the neighbors gone?" Emily hadn't answered. What could she say? That the world was falling apart and they were just trying to survive a little longer? The house, once full of laughter, music, and life, had turned into a fortress. Windows were boarded. Doors were reinforced. Curtains remained closed, always. Every creak of the wooden floor made someone flinch. Every distant thump or groan sent Jake to the front window with the shotgun. But it wasn't until that night that things truly began to unravel. Emily was in the kitchen when the power cut out. Not a flicker. Just darkness. Total and instant. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. The soft buzz of the ceiling fan halted. The silence deepened, and in it, Emily could hear her own heartbeat. "Jake," she called. Heavy footsteps, the sound of a safety being clicked off, and then Jake was beside her. "Stay calm," he whispered, flashlight already in hand. The kids came down moments later, their faces pale in the flashlight beam. Noah clung to Mia, and even she looked shaken now. They sat together in the living room, surrounded by shadows, flashlight beams bouncing off walls and anxious faces. Jake checked his radio. Static. Emily tried the phone again. Nothing. The outside world had disappeared. And then, thud. All four froze. The sound had come from outside. The porch. Another thud. Heavier this time. Followed by dragging. Slow, scraping steps across concrete. Jake raised the shotgun, motioning for everyone to stay quiet. Emily held both children close, one arm around each, heart pounding so loud she thought it might give them away. The sound reached the door. Then stopped. Silence. A scratching began. Fingernails, or claws, scraping slowly down the wooden surface. It went on for minutes. Hours. Maybe it was only 30 seconds. No one moved. No one breathed. Then, suddenly, it was gone. Jake waited, frozen in place. When no other sounds came, he lowered the gun and exhaled. "That wasn't a looter," he said. "That thing wasn't even trying to break in. Just testing." Emily looked at him, fear rising in her throat. "You think it'll come back?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Upstairs, as the family tried to settle back into uneasy silence, Mia sat by her window, sketchpad forgotten. She had seen something move beyond the trees. Something not quite human. She didn't tell anyone. Not yet. But she knew what she had seen. And in that moment, she stopped pretending. Outside, the quiet stretched on. But it was no longer peaceful. It was pregnant with tension. Something was out there. Watching. Waiting. The silence was not the absence of sound. It was the presence of something else. Something worse. Morning brought no comfort. The sun rose, pale and weak behind the thick gray clouds, casting long shadows through the boarded windows. Jake hadn't slept. He sat at the kitchen table, shotgun still within reach, eyes fixed on the front door as if daring it to move again. Emily poured water into cups from their dwindling supply and handed one to each child in silence. The night's visitor hadn't returned, but its presence lingered in their minds like a sour smell that wouldn't leave. They needed a plan. "We can't just sit here forever," Jake finally said. His voice was low, scratchy from exhaustion. "If no help is coming, we need to figure something out." Emily nodded. She had been thinking the same thing, but the idea of leaving the house, of stepping into whatever horror waited outside, was paralyzing. Still, she knew they couldn't stay much longer. "We start small," she said. "Inventory everything. Food. Water. Batteries. If we know exactly what we have, we can figure out how long it'll last. Then, we decide." Upstairs, Mia listened through the vents. Her fingers trembled as she sketched what she'd seen the night before. A figure, not fully human, its skin sagging, gray. Eyes white and soulless. It had stared up at her window for what felt like hours. She didn't tell her parents. Not because she didn't trust them, but because she didn't want them to panic. Not yet. She glanced over at her closet. Inside, hidden beneath her clothes, was a backpack she had secretly packed 3 days ago. A flashlight. Snacks. A small knife from the kitchen. A folded map of the neighborhood. She didn't plan to run. Not yet. But part of her wanted to be ready if things went bad. Downstairs, Jake opened the basement door for the first time in 2 days. It creaked like a warning. The flashlight beam cut through the dark as he stepped cautiously down. Emily followed, careful not to bump into the walls. The basement had always been cluttered, filled with Jake's old tools, holiday decorations, and forgotten boxes. But something had changed. Jake noticed it first, scratches on the inside of the door. Not deep, but deliberate. As if something, or someone, had been trying to get out. "What the hell?" he muttered, kneeling to examine them. "Those weren't there before," Emily whispered. Jake opened the tool cabinet. Nothing. Then the storage closet. Still nothing. Until they heard it. A faint click. From the far corner of the basement, behind a stack of crates. They froze. Then, slowly, Jake lifted the gun and stepped forward. His finger hovered over the trigger as he nudged the crates aside. A trapdoor. He stared at it, confused. This wasn't here before, was it? Emily shook her head. "Your dad built this basement. There shouldn't be anything under it." Jake hesitated, then reached for the latch. It opened with a groan, revealing a narrow crawlspace, no taller than 3 feet. The air that drifted up was cold and metallic, like rust and old blood. "Do we check it?" Jake asked, his voice unsteady. Emily answered by reaching for the flashlight and lowering it in. The beam swept over rough concrete, dust, and something else. A shoe. Small. Child-sized. Emily recoiled. "We're not alone here," she whispered. "We were never alone." Jake closed the trapdoor slowly and stood. "We seal this up. Whatever that space is, it stays shut." They returned upstairs with the horrible realization that their home, their sanctuary, held secrets darker than they'd imagined. That afternoon, as Mia helped Noah sort canned goods, she finally spoke. "I saw something last night." Jake looked up from the map he had spread out on the kitchen table. "What do you mean?" "Out the window. It was watching us. It wasn't human. It wasn't dead either. Not completely. Jake's hand tightened on the shotgun. Mia continued. It knew I saw it. I think it was trying to decide something. Whether we were worth the effort. Or maybe it was waiting for something. Emily and Jake exchanged a look of dread. Before either could respond, a loud crash erupted from the basement. The trapdoor. Something was down there, and it didn't want to stay hidden anymore. The basement trapdoor thudded again. Jake stood frozen at the top of the steps, shotgun raised, pulse thundering in his ears. Below, the noise stopped, then something scraped, slow and deliberate, like fingernails across concrete. It wasn't loud. But it was intentional. Emily stood behind him, whispering urgently, Jake, come back. Don't go down there. But he didn't move. He couldn't. What was that thing? A person? A creature? Someone hiding? Someone trapped? Or worse, something that had been locked away for a reason? Then, knock knock knock. They all jumped. It wasn't the basement this time. It was the front door. 3 steady knocks, slow, spaced out. Calm. Too calm. Not the pounding of a raider. Not the scratching of a creature. It was someone who knew how to wait. Jake lowered the shotgun from the stairs and moved to the door, quietly positioning himself to the side as Emily held her breath. Who's there? Jake asked through the door. A male voice, hoarse but clear, answered. My name's Ben. Please, please, I just need water. I'm not infected. I swear. Jake looked through the peephole. The man was alone. Late 20s, filthy, his clothes torn and caked with dirt. No visible wounds. He didn't look armed. But he did look desperate. Emily came beside Jake. If he's lying. I know, Jake said. But if he's telling the truth. Emily glanced at the kids. Mia stood protectively behind Noah, her jaw tight. Jake made a choice. He cracked the door open, just a few inches, the shotgun hidden behind his leg. One wrong move and you're dead, he warned. Ben nodded quickly. Understood. Jake opened the door just enough to let him in. Ben stepped inside and collapsed onto the floor, breathing hard. Thank you, thank you. Emily handed him a bottle of water and kept her eyes on him the entire time. Mia didn't take her eyes off the trapdoor, now ominously silent again. Ben drank greedily, then leaned back. I've been walking for days. I came from the city, what's left of it, anyway. Jake crouched down beside him. What happened? Ben wiped his mouth and looked up, eyes haunted. It started with riots. Then came the evacuations, then the lockdowns. But the infected didn't care about borders or curfews. They don't think. They just follow movement. Sound. Heat. They're not like the movies. They don't shamble, they hunt. Noah whimpered. Mia squeezed his shoulder. Ben continued, I saw whole neighborhoods wiped out in a single night. The military was the first to fall. They tried to fight. But it's like, the more you kill, the more they learn. They adapt. Jake exchanged a glance with Emily. Adapt? Ben nodded. They're not just mindless. They mimic. They wait. They test your defenses. If you get too comfortable, that's when they strike. Mia's face turned pale. I saw one, she whispered. Outside my window. It didn't attack. It just stared. Ben turned to her slowly. Then it marked you. Jake stepped between them. What does that mean? It means it knows where you are. And it might come back. With others. Emily felt the temperature in the room drop. We have to move. We can't stay here. But Jake hesitated. And go where? If they're everywhere. Anywhere's better than here, Emily said. That thing in the basement, the trapdoor didn't make those noises before. Something's changed. Ben spoke again, his voice low. If you're hearing sounds from below, then your house might be sitting on one of their tunnels. Jake's face went pale. What tunnels? They don't just roam. The infected, they've started burrowing. Underground. Hives. Nests. I've seen whole towns collapse. People thought they were safe until the floor gave out beneath them. Silence. Then, thump. From the trapdoor. Harder this time. Followed by a faint, wheezing breath. Ben stood up, eyes wide. We have to go. Now. If one's already beneath you, more are coming. Emily ran to gather supplies. Jake grabbed the emergency pack. Mia grabbed her hidden bag without a word. Noah was already trembling, but he followed. They moved fast, but not fast enough. Because before they could even unlock the back door, the trapdoor in the basement exploded open with a crack, and something began to crawl its way up into their home. It was time to run. The sound was unforgettable. Wood shattering. Claws against stone. A wet, guttural hiss that vibrated in their bones. Jake didn't look back. He grabbed Noah in one arm and yanked open the back door. Emily, Mia, and Ben scrambled after him as they burst into the pale, dying daylight. The wind hit their faces, sharp with the scent of decay. Behind them, something in the house shrieked, a sound no human throat could make. They ran. Through the backyard. Across the fence. Into the overgrown field beyond. Each breath burned. Each heartbeat roared louder than the last. And still they ran, because to stop meant to die. It wasn't until they reached the edge of the woods that Jake turned around. Their house stood quiet again. Still. The back door hung open, creaking in the breeze. But nothing followed. Not yet. Ben bent over, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. It's testing us. Seeing how far we'll run before we break. Emily wiped sweat from her face. We need to keep moving. Where? Jake asked, voice low. Ben pointed east. There's an old farmhouse about 2 miles from here. I passed it on the way out of the city. Looked abandoned. Might be secure enough to rest for the night. Jake hesitated, but nodded. They had no better option. The sun was dipping low by the time they found the farmhouse. It stood crooked on its foundation, old and graying with age, surrounded by tangled brush and rusting equipment. The barn beside it sagged inward like it had been punched by a giant. But the front door was intact. The windows were boarded. And there was no sign of movement. Jake raised his shotgun and motioned everyone to stay back. I'll check it, he said. No, Emily replied. We go together. Inside, the air was stale but quiet. Dust danced in the light of Ben's flashlight as they moved cautiously from room to room. Cobwebs clung to the ceilings. A broken chair lay on its side in the kitchen. A half-eaten meal sat frozen in mold on the table, untouched for weeks. But no infected. At least, not yet. Jake blocked the doors with furniture. Ben checked the upstairs. Mia and Noah sat close on a tattered couch, trying to stay warm under a dusty blanket. The silence of the house was eerie, thick with forgotten memories and hidden warnings. Later, as night claimed the sky, they lit a single candle in the corner of the room. No one spoke for a long time. Then Ben broke the silence. I had a brother, he said softly. He was 8. Loved planes. We had this game where we'd fold paper jets and see whose flew the farthest. Stupid, I know. Mia looked up. What happened to him? Ben didn't answer at first. Then, he got sick. I didn't know it was that kind of sick. Not until it was too late. I couldn't do it. I couldn't shoot him. The room fell silent again. Emily reached for Noah's hand. Jake glanced at the shotgun by his side. Mia asked the question no one else dared, did he come back? Ben nodded slowly. He always comes back. In my dreams. And maybe more. A soft thud interrupted the moment. Jake stood instantly. What was that? Everyone froze. Another thud. This time from upstairs. Emily pulled Noah closer. Mia backed into the corner. Jake raised his weapon and motioned for Ben to follow. Together, they climbed the creaking stairs. Each step felt like a drumbeat in their chests. At the top, they turned the corner. The hallway was empty. Jake moved toward the nearest door, the master bedroom. He turned the knob slowly. The hinges creaked open. The room was dark and cold. But empty. Ben checked the closet. Empty. Then... thud. From below. The living room. They both turned. Mia screamed. Jake and Ben rushed back downstairs to find the front door swinging open, wind howling in. The barricade had been shoved aside. Something had been inside with them and left. Or worse, was still there, hiding. Jake slammed the door shut and resecured it. But the damage was done. Now they knew there were no safe places left. The front door had been forced open. But by what, or who, no one could say. The family stayed huddled together in the farmhouse's narrow living room, backs against the wall, the candle now blown out. Darkness wrapped around them like a shroud, each shadow seeming to twist and lean closer, listening. Jake held the shotgun tight, his finger hovering near the trigger. Emily sat with Noah cradled in her arms, rocking him softly, whispering words that tried to be comforting but came out hollow. Mia scanned the room, flashlight trembling in her grip. And Ben stood guard near the boarded window, breathing steady but shallow. This place isn't right, Mia said quietly. Jake didn't argue. Something about the house felt wrong. Not just the creaks and groans of an old building, but something deeper. Something watching. Ben walked toward the fireplace. There's something weird about this wall, he murmured. His fingers traced faint lines hidden beneath the soot. Like someone scratched into it. Jake joined him, wiping away dust and grime. There, beneath the black smears, was a series of marks. Dozens of names, carved in uneven, desperate lettering. Next to each name was a number. A date. Some recent. Some from over a year ago. Many were crossed out, deeply, violently. Names of people who came here, Emily whispered, coming closer. And didn't leave, Jake finished. Ben pointed to one name not crossed out. Samuel, 18 days. Beneath it, someone had etched a message, rough and jagged. They come at night. Not always. But sometimes. Another line followed, smaller, almost hidden. It hides in the walls. Noah whimpered. Emily hugged him tighter. Let's leave. Now. Jake hesitated. It's night. There's nowhere else. Not without light. Not without noise. Ben nodded grimly. If we run in the dark, we'll be louder. More obvious. Out there, it's open. In here, we might have a chance. Mia looked around. A chance at what? Getting picked off one by one? No one had an answer. Then, knock knock knock. All of them froze. Not on the door. From inside the walls. Jake spun around, heart racing. Everyone upstairs. Now. They scrambled up the narrow staircase, moving fast but quiet. Jake took the lead, shotgun ready. He ushered everyone into the master bedroom and shut the door behind them, wedging a chair under the handle. The room was dimly lit by the moonlight filtering through cracks in the boarded windows. Dust hung thick in the air. I hate this place, Mia said, voice shaking. Jake moved to the far wall. We stay together. Quiet. Nothing gets through that door. But Ben wasn't looking at the door anymore. He was staring at a section of the wall, where the wallpaper had peeled back in strips. Jake, he said softly, pointing. There's something behind this wall. Jake stepped over and slowly peeled back more paper. Beneath it was rough wooden paneling, scratched from the inside. Long claw marks. Deep gouges. And something else. A message, etched in uneven block letters. IT watches through the eyes of the house. Suddenly, Noah let out a scream and pointed to the far corner. The closet door stood open. But no one remembered opening it. Jake aimed his shotgun. Everyone behind me. They moved slowly, breath held tight. Jake reached the closet and flung the door wide. Nothing. Just a pile of dusty clothes. An old coat. A small box of family photos that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. Ben exhaled, shoulders dropping. But Noah kept staring. It was there, he whispered. It was. It had eyes. Mia hugged him tight. It's okay. We're okay now. Jake closed the closet, but that feeling of being watched never left. The walls seemed tighter now. The air, thicker. Every creak made them jump. And then, as they all settled down in a tense, terrified silence, a sound came from beneath the floorboards. Scratch. Scratch. Thump. Something was beneath them. Jake didn't sleep that night. None of them did. And in the morning, when the sun finally rose and lit the farmhouse in pale gold, the trapdoor to the attic was wide open. But no one had gone up there. The morning sun bled through the broken boards like a dying fire, but it brought no warmth. Jake stood beneath the attic entrance, staring at the open hatch above. The ladder still hung down, creaking softly with every gust of wind, as if inviting him to climb up, or daring him to. No one touched it, Emily said, her voice flat. Jake nodded. It opened by itself. Ben stepped forward. Maybe it was the wind. Mia shook her head. Or maybe it was watching, just like the message said. Jake didn't want to believe that. Couldn't afford to. They were barely holding on as it was. He took a breath, flicked the safety off his shotgun, and started up the ladder. I'll check it. I'm coming with you, Ben insisted. Jake didn't argue. The two men climbed slowly into the attic. Dust drifted in lazy swirls through the shafts of morning light. The air was dry but heavy, like something hadn't moved in years, or had just stopped moving moments before. The attic was filled with old furniture, moldy boxes, and broken crates. Jake moved cautiously, sweeping his flashlight across the space. Nothing but silence. Then Ben paused by an old trunk. Hey! Something's carved on this. Jake turned. The trunk was large and sturdy, half covered by a rotting blanket. On the lid were fresh scratches, not old ones, not faded. Fresh. 3 words. It knows fear. Ben swallowed hard. Whoever lived here before, they knew it wasn't just a virus. Jake pried open the trunk. Inside was a collection of strange items, half-burned candles, a rusty hunting knife, several vials filled with dark, dried liquid, and a journal. Its leather cover was brittle, the pages yellowed. Jake opened it. The entries were hurried, written in trembling hands. The final pages chilled him. Day 1, heard the news. Locked the doors. Waited for the world to end. Day 4, my daughter turned. I had to lock her in the basement. Day 7, she's still alive. Still human? She begs to be let out, but her voice isn't hers anymore. Day 12, something else is using her voice. Day 16, it doesn't need to bite. It just looks at you. Whispers things. And you start to change. Day 18, the house is part of it now. I can feel it breathing. Day 19, I buried the knife in the floorboards. If anyone finds this, don't listen to it. Don't trust the walls. Day 20, I can hear it calling me upstairs. I think I'll go. Jake stared at the last sentence. No ending. Just a blot of ink and a smear across the page. Ben knelt and began pulling at the floorboards, guided by the journal's clue. After a few minutes, he pried one loose and found a cloth bundle. Inside was the same knife from the journal, old, stained, but still sharp. Jake didn't know why, but holding it made his skin crawl. They returned downstairs, where Emily and the kids waited anxiously. "What did you find?" she asked. Jake handed her the journal. As she read, her face paled. Noah peeked over her shoulder, but Jake gently pushed him away. "It's not just the infected," Jake said. "Something else is spreading. Through the house. Maybe through us." Mia shuddered. "You think it's like a parasite?" Ben shrugged. "Or a spirit. Or something worse. We keep trying to make sense of this with science. But what if it's something older than that?" Emily closed the journal. "Then we can't stay. Not another night." "I agree," Jake said. "We move before dark. We'll find another place. Any place." They gathered supplies quickly, what little food they had, water, the shotgun, the strange knife. They didn't speak much, but the tension in the air said enough. And then, as they were about to leave, thump! From the basement. Everyone froze. Another thump. Followed by soft, dragging footsteps. Then, a voice. Small. Fragile. Familiar. "Noah," it whispered. "It's me, Daddy. I'm scared. Let me out." Noah's face went white. "That's Mom's voice." Emily grabbed him tight. "Don't listen. It's not her. It's not her." But the voice continued. Crying now. Begging. Pleading. Jake pointed the shotgun toward the basement door. "Everyone out. Now." They backed out the front door, the voice still calling after them. "Please don't leave me. Please. I'm so cold." Mia covered her ears. Ben shoved the door shut. Jake didn't look back. They walked away from the farmhouse, the sun rising behind them, the voice echoing in their minds like a ghost refusing to be forgotten. Dust choked the road ahead as the family moved further from the farmhouse, its haunted silence trailing behind them like smoke. The sun had risen high, but the warmth did little to ease the chill inside them. The wind whispered through abandoned trees and crumbling fences, and every now and then, Jake would glance back, just once, half expecting to see the farmhouse still watching. They walked for hours before they saw signs of life. Or what used to be life. A small town lay nestled between two hills, half-burned buildings, smashed windows, and rotting cars with doors left open like people had fled mid-scream. The town was dead quiet, but Jake motioned for everyone to slow down and crouch behind a rusted pickup truck. "Could be looters," he said. "Or infected," Emily added, clutching Noah's hand. Ben scanned the windows. "I don't see anyone." "Doesn't mean no one's watching." Jake nodded and motioned to stay low. "We'll hit that grocery store first. Mia, Ben, with me. Emily, stay with Noah behind the truck. We'll call if it's safe." Mia's grip tightened on her flashlight, and Ben took out the kitchen knife he'd kept since the highway. The trio crept across the road, boots crunching over glass and gravel. The store's automatic doors were busted, one dangling by a single bolt. Inside, aisles were overturned, shelves mostly bare, but not completely. Jake raised a hand. "Quiet. Stay alert." They moved in. Cans of beans, half a box of cereal, some bottled water. Jake stuffed the essentials into his backpack, keeping one eye on the rear of the store. Then Mia stopped. "Jake. Look." On the wall, behind the counter, was a map. Places circled in red. Outposts, someone had written in thick black marker. "Safe zones," said another label. And next to one of the circled towns, a name. Caleb. Still alive. Trust no one else. Before Jake could say anything, the sound of movement froze them in place. Clack. Someone was here. Jake turned toward the sound, shotgun raised. A figure stepped from the back storage room, a tall man, hooded, holding a revolver loosely at his side. "Easy," Jake said. "We're not looking for trouble." The man nodded slowly. Neither am I. Name's Caleb. Ben blinked. Like on the map? Caleb smirked, lowering his weapon. Didn't think anyone else would see that message. You're lucky. Most people who come through here don't ask questions. They don't walk out. Jake relaxed slightly. We're just passing through. Trying to find safety. A place to rest. Caleb studied them. You've been to the farmhouse, haven't you? The room turned colder at the mention. Jake narrowed his eyes. You know it? I stayed there once. A long time ago. Before it settled in. Caleb leaned against the counter. The house doesn't let you leave easy. Most people hear the voice and don't make it far. You did. That's rare. Mia stepped forward. What is it? What's in that house? Caleb's gaze turned distant. It's not infection. Not in the way people think. It feeds on isolation. Regret. Guilt. The longer you stay, the more it learns. The more it wears you. He tapped the map. But there's a place. Up north. Fort Ellison. Still running on solar. Still has defenses. I was heading there. You should come. Jake was cautious. And why help us? Caleb smiled faintly. Because I've been alone too long. And because I saw something in that kid's eyes, he said, glancing toward the window at Noah. Hope's rare these days. It sounded too good. Too perfect. Jake glanced at Ben and Mia. They were thinking the same thing. You said not to trust anyone, Ben said. I meant anyone who smiles too fast, Caleb replied. You'll know when it's real. A howl pierced the silence outside. Low. Guttural. Not human. Jake moved to the window. A group of infected, 4 of them, shambled from an alley. One paused, and then turned its head sharply, locking eyes with Jake through the dusty glass. It screamed. Caleb cocked his revolver. Looks like we've got company. Jake bolted for the door. Emily. Get ready. They sprinted back to the truck as Emily threw open the passenger door and grabbed Noah. Infected. Jake yelled. Run. They moved as one, but the infected were fast, faster than any they'd seen before. Twisted limbs, red eyes, and a shriek that pierced bone. The family ran down the main street with Caleb covering their rear. He fired once, twice, dropping 2, but more came. Jake led them behind a diner, down an alley, through a broken fence. They didn't stop running until they reached an open field beyond the town. Breathless. Terrified. But alive. They collapsed behind a fallen billboard. Ben looked back. They didn't follow. Caleb wiped blood from his cheek. Not this time. But they will. Jake looked at him. Fort Ellison, he said. Let's go. The sky was burning orange as the group trudged along the abandoned highway, Fort Ellison still miles away. A rusted road sign leaned sideways in the wind, Ellison, 22 miles. Jake walked ahead, shotgun slung over one shoulder, his eyes scanning the horizon. Behind him, Emily held Noah's hand tightly, while Mia and Ben flanked the sides. Caleb brought up the rear, silent and watchful. The road felt endless, stretching like a memory that refused to fade. Every step echoed with the weight of choices made, people lost, and the unspoken fear of what lay ahead. We'll make it before nightfall, Jake said, though even he wasn't sure. We've said that before, Mia muttered. Emily looked down at Noah. He hadn't spoken much since the town. He just kept looking behind them. Watching. Waiting. As if the ghost of the farmhouse still followed. Then they heard it. A low rumble. Everyone froze. Ben raised his rifle. Is that an engine? From over the hill ahead, a black military-style truck emerged, kicking up a cloud of dirt. It barreled toward them, fast. Jake raised a hand to wave it down, but Caleb stepped in front of him. Don't, he warned. We don't know who they are. But it was too late. The truck stopped abruptly 100 feet away. Its doors opened, and 5 armed men stepped out. Not infected. Human. But something about them felt wrong. Where you headed? The leader called out. Jake kept his voice calm. Fort Ellison. The man smirked. Funny. That's where we just came from. Bad news, it's gone. Burned to the ground. Emily's breath hitched. Mia whispered, he's lying. Turn around, the man said. You've got food. Weapons. That's all we want. Jake stepped forward. We're not looking for a fight. Good, the man said. Because you wouldn't win. Then Caleb moved. Fast. His revolver barked once, then again. 2 of the men dropped before the others even raised their weapons. Down. Jake shouted. Gunfire erupted. Dust kicked up. Mia dragged Noah behind a ditch as Emily returned fire with a stolen pistol. Ben flanked wide, taking a shot that clipped one attacker in the shoulder. In less than a minute, it was over. Only silence remained, and the blood-stained road behind them. Jake crouched next to Caleb, who was bleeding from a graze on his side. You good? Jake asked. Caleb nodded. It's just a scratch. Keep moving. Fort Ellison's real. They didn't want us to reach it. They moved fast now, urgency in every step. When the sun began to set, they saw it, walls, fences, and towers rising above the treeline. Solar panels shimmered in the fading light. A real place. Real people. They had made it. Guards at the gate watched them approach with suspicion. One raised a radio. Another lifted a pair of binoculars. Jake stepped forward, raising both hands. We're survivors, he called out. There's 5 of us. No infection. We need help. There was a long pause. Then the gates opened. They were ushered inside, checked, scanned, questioned, but welcomed. Blankets. Food. Water. A clean room. A moment of peace. For the first time in what felt like forever, Noah smiled. That night, Jake stood on a platform overlooking the compound. The stars shone bright. Silent. Peaceful. He still had the knife from the farmhouse in his bag. The journal too. Reminders of what they'd faced. What they'd survived. Emily joined him, wrapping her arms around him from behind. We're safe, she whispered. For now, Jake replied. She nodded against his shoulder. That's enough. Down below, Mia and Ben laughed softly over hot food. Caleb stood apart, watching the gate, like he was waiting for something. Jake knew better than to believe this was the end. But for the first time, he let himself hope. The world was still broken. But they weren't. Not yet. The end.